Jimmy Midnight here with another special report. And today, we're talking about the wacky tobacco, Mary Jane, Muggles, Mooter, Indian Hay, Loco Weed, Love Weed, Bambalacha, Mohaski, Muka, Grass, Blue Sage, Giggle Smokes, and Zooey Mama. Today, we're talking about the 1936 clarion call known as Reefer Madness, which warns us about the biggest scourge since America's epidemic of witches. And that time Martians invaded Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Back in the mid-30s, when I was still sowing my oats on the airwaves and the Great Depression was ravaging our fair nation, an even greater calamity was lurking in jazz clubs, bohemian art houses, and other dens of sin where pushers peddled their wares to precocious youngsters. Are you laying down the hustle, says the hophead to the street pharmacist. Give me an ace, says the buyer, a dime bag if you got it. Some black gungy, chiba, some Maui Wowie. I'll hit you up on the flip side. You know I'm good for it. KBL pays me on Monday. Not that I know the first thing about scoundrels like this. It was in that atmosphere of moral degeneracy that a church group financed a picture that was originally called Tell Your Children. But when test audiences weren't sure whether to warn little Johnny about Cambodian Red or Red China, it was renamed to Reefer Madness. Directed by Louis J. Gassner, whose previous works included the acclaimed serial The Perils of Pauline and The Seven Pearls, the film was intended to warn audiences about, quote, the real public enemy number one. It was subsequently purchased by producer Dwayne Esper and re-released on the exploitation circuit, and there it's remained through the present day, becoming a cult classic of sorts, informing the masses about how cannabis is exactly like PCP. Its first effect is sudden, violent, uncontrollable laughter, then came dangerous hallucinations, space expands, time slows down, almost stands still. So smoking pot is like the first time I heard the White Album. Fixed ideas come next, conjuring up monstrous extravagances, followed by emotional disturbances, the total inability to direct thoughts, leading finally to acts of shocking violence, ending often in incurable insanity. Now, I can vouch for that last part. Joints do come with full frontal lobotomies, because the dread marijuana may be reaching forth next for your son or daughter. Or yours. Or yours. Oh dear God. Alright. The movie opens with the principal of Lakeside High School addressing the PTA on the horrors of dope. Tell your children. Dr. Alfred Carroll, played by Joseph Forte, demands compulsory education on this horrible affliction, this bane on America's youth, preferably a campaign headlined by a former movie star who once shared billing with a chimpanzee. And after running down a list of places to hide your drugs,
they are hidden in fake jewelry cases, in the heels of shoes, women's shoes especially, because the drugs can be secreted in false heels. Hollowed shaving brushes are another medium. Books with false centers.
Hadn't thought of that one.
Are convenient hiding places.
After that life changer,
have been exaggerated. Let me tell you of something that happened right here in our own city.
Wait, this whole picture is a flashback? Alright, fine. Proceed. So the movie cuts to a fine, upstanding citizen and drug dealer named Jack who wakes up his lady friend named May and tells her to, for God's sake, tidy up the place. Now you'd think it's to get rid of evidence in case the G-men come a-knocking, but in reality this is the 30s and cooking and cleaning is May's only real ambition in life. Well, other than nagging Jack about his clientele.
A couple of your customers, May.
Yeah? They're old enough to know what they're doing. Not like those young kids you bring up here.
I mean, if the valedictorian doesn't set his watch to 4:20 to get through midterms, then he's doing something wrong. And after haranguing May about their flat, whoa! Your Dare campaign might have Darren the Lion, but I bet it doesn't have the 1930s equivalent to OnlyFans. Some of May's customers stop by for a toke of Puff the Magic Dragon, and she just can't get over Jack's underage customer base.
I gotta make some deliveries, and I'll probably drop by Joe's place and bring back a couple of the kids.
Oh, I wish you'd lay off those kids.
And speaking of kids, the movie cuts to a trio of 30-year-olds masquerading as teenagers. Eddie invites Ralphie Boy over for a real swell party at his grandmother's. Ralph spots Jack and points out 3 more teenagers, and so something you might have picked up on is that these characters are nearly interchangeable. In fact, they're such slices of white bread with a side of mayo that I legitimately had trouble keeping them straight. We cut to a soda bar where the piano player looks like he should be 50 feet away from kids at all times, and the patrons are having some kind of seizure. The drug dealers peruse the crowd for some juvenile customers, and they settle on a pair of 30-year-olds. Again, 50 feet, at all times. Wait, you're telling me the piano player wasn't already on drugs? The two are invited back to Maze for a real happening shindig. Meanwhile, Bill and Mary are reenacting a scene from Romeo and Juliet with the raw sexual energy of a bag of frozen peas.
By the hour of 9.
I will not fail.
Jimmy picks up Bill, and after another stop at the soda shop... Stop giving me that look! You're giving me the willies! After that, they all end up back at May's place, who's suddenly okay with pushing Mary Jane on youngsters.
Well, try one of these.
Bill's new drug wench hooks him up with a joint, and maybe he should try weed. Might help with the giant stick up his ass. Jimmy, I think that's Jimmy. Again, they all look the same. Jimmy bums a joint off Jack. Jack pays a visit to his supplier, where another dealer flat out refuses to peddle dope on youngsters.
Jim, you're after the dough, aren't you? Yeah, but I don't need dough that bad. Taking 2-bit pieces from kids.
And is immediately fired.
Boys are not satisfied. I'm always glad to have them retire. Retire permanently.
Good help really is impossible to find. Jack returns to the car, and Jimmy, who's suddenly acting like he snorted a line of cocaine, drives like a maniac before hitting some poor schmo, or he decided to take a nap, I don't know. We cut to Dr. Carroll, who looks like he really wants to pass the collection plate around and tell you about the Estes Perkle sermon he just saw. He tells the Federal Office's Bureau of Investigation about a drug ring that he thinks is preying on students. But James Cagney is having none of it, saying Uncle Sam's hands are tied, but he'd recommend an anti-drug campaign. The G-Man reminds Dr. Carroll about 16-year-old Victor Licata, who murdered his entire family with an axe, supposedly while high on pot. And never mind that no link was ever found between Licata and marijuana. It's more likely he was simply mentally ill. But, you know, mental illness didn't exist in the 30s. And the government never lets a good casus belli go to waste, so they abused the hell out of that story to call for a bigger crackdown on Mama's Christmas tree. Apparently, Bill's new fascination with the green stuff is affecting his grades, so the good Dr. Carroll asks him straight up to narc on himself.
Well, that is, you see, I'm worried about something at home.
And the boy blames trouble at home for his slipping academics. The doctor takes his explanation at face value and says he can always confide in him with a look that says that perhaps he too should be 50 feet away from kids at all times. And apparently, Bill's drug habit has kept him off the tennis courts with Mary.
Hello, Mary. You want to play a set?
Thanks, Teddy, but I'm waiting for someone.
Well, if you're waiting for Bill, he hasn't been here for weeks.
Instead, he's been hanging out with Blanche. That's, drug wench number 2. Again, hard to tell. And dancing the night away at Maze. And, again, this is how real stoners act. And this is how the movie portrays them. Bill and Blanche disappear to bump uglies, with Bill looking like he's on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And this prodigy over here is able to get lucky and play a swell piano. A regular Amadeus over here, all thanks to weed. 2 G-men show up at Mary's place asking about a hit-and-run driver.
Tell me, was the person killed?
Fortunately, he wasn't, but that's still no excuse for hit-and-run driving.
Ah, okay, so he was taking a nap.
I was there all afternoon.
Did you happen to loan your car to a couple of men?
No, I had the car all afternoon myself.
Mary lies and claims she had the car the whole time. Mary follows a lead on Jimmy's whereabouts back to May's, but she's just missed him. In the other room, Blanche looks like she's really constipated, while Bill is feeling guilty, remorseful. I don't know, it's hard to tell. After slipping Mary some of the marijuana, Ralph tries to put the moves on her, which she summarily rejects. Ralph attempts something that rhymes with grape, and Bill somehow hears none of this because we all know pot makes you hard of hearing. In his stupor, Bill imagines the sex is consensual, likely the result of those psychedelic mushrooms he just consumed, and he attacks Ralph. Jack, who was in the other room the whole time and also somehow didn't hear all the screaming and commotion until now, runs in gun drawn. In the ensuing struggle, the gun somehow goes off and a stray bullet hits and kills Mary. Again, taking a nice nap, Jack knocks out Bill, who wakes up about 30 seconds later, remembering absolutely nothing, and he believes that he's the one who killed Mary.
Harry.
Because we all know pot gives you amnesia and makes you a really crummy actor.
Mary. Mary.
All those Shakespeare soliloquies for nothing. At this point, Bill is going on trial for murder, and being the good principal that he is, Dr. Carroll immediately turns against him.
And while Bill Harper had been considered an exceedingly good player, I saw him miss the ball by as much as 3 or 4 feet.
Or he's just a really crummy tennis player. Ralph, Mr. Grapey McGrape, is starting to crack, so Jack goes to see his supplier and gets the okay to whack Ralph. Bill, of course, is declared guilty, thanks Dr. Carroll, and Jack returns to his apartment to find Ralph falling to pieces, or high on meth, hard to tell. Ralph immediately deduces that Jack is there to silence him, and...
You're crazy. Take it easy, kid.
Well, I'm convinced. But Ralph gets the jump on him and beats him to death, which Blanche finds hilarious, I think. When the police arrive, Blanche has suddenly gone from manic to depressive, and the 5-0 arrest Ralph, Blanche, and May. Blanche immediately breaks under questioning and agrees to testify against Jack in exchange for leniency, upon which Bill's guilty verdict is immediately reversed, and while she's being led away, Blanche decides to do her tribute to Birdman and see if she can fly. Spoiler alert, she can't. Bill is set free, Ralph is sent to an insane asylum, and after another stern finger-wagging by Dr. Carroll, everyone lives happily ever after. Well, except for Jack, Ralph, Blanche, and Mary. Tell your children!
The next tragedy may be that of your daughter, or your son, or yours, or yours, or yours.
Over the years, Reefer Madness has acquired a sort of cult following who enjoy this gem of a film in the same ironic way they enjoy Dark Dungeons or Plan 9 from Outer Space. It was later adapted into at least 2 separate stage musicals, 1 TV musical starring Alan Cumming and Kristen Bell, and even the video game L.A. Noire includes a DLC case entitled Reefer Madness. These days, marijuana is legal in 22 states, plus the District of Columbia, and in the others, it's various degrees of outright illegal to decriminalized or a simple misdemeanor. And Reefer Madness remains one of the most unintentionally hilarious films of all time. Ironically, the more baked you are, the better it becomes. Thanks for joining me for another special report. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to my televisual program, and I'll see you next time. This is Jimmy Midnight signing off.